What if the fastest way to afford your dream vacation home was to buy it with someone else? On today's expert episode, we're unpacking exactly how to buy your second home with family or friends and how to structure that partnership to protect both your finances and your relationship. What if your 401k came with a fire pit and a lake view? That's the question that inspired it all. I'm Katie Klein, and living in New York City meant buying a home felt impossible. So I decided to flip the script and buy my second home first. When I'm not there, it doubles as a short-term rental, covering its costs, building equity, and even turning a profit. And best of all, it gives me a place to vacation for free. What 401k can do that? Every week, join me as we hear from real people who've done the same and experts who can help you do it too. If you thought owning any home, let alone a second one, was out of reach, this is the show for you. This is Second Home First. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Second Home First. I'm your host, Katie Klein, and today we have a really exciting expert episode for you all. We're diving into a topic I know many of you have been asking about: how to buy a second home with someone else, whether that's a sibling, a best friend, or another family you love traveling with. The truth for many of us is that the fastest path into vacation home ownership isn't doing it alone, it's partnering up. But partnership comes with its own set of questions. How do you structure the deal? How do you split equity? What happens when one person wants out? And how do you protect both the investment and the friendship? To help us unpack all of that, I'm joined by Natalie Palmer. She's the host of the No Vacancy podcast, a seasoned short-term rental operator, a co-host, and most importantly for today's discussion, someone who fundraised thousands of dollars for vacation home projects. She's seen every version of partnership: couples who bought together and thrived, friends who have had a falling out after 20 years, and people who've built a real estate portfolio worth millions without ever investing a dollar of their own money. So, without further ado, let's hear from Natalie. Natalie, it is so lovely to see you.
I know, I saw you like 10 seconds ago because we just finished recording my podcast, but hi again.
I was going to say, how fun is this? We get to do back to back. I was just interviewed by Natalie for her podcast, No Vacancy. And now here she is joining us on Second Home First.
Yes, hello. I'm so excited to be on I've been on Sweet Success, but so excited to be on this podcast for the first time. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here because, in speaking to people who want to buy a second home, something that I've been hearing a lot of is they like the idea and they potentially want to buy a place with family or friends. Obviously, this is something that can share the burden of a down payment. It can even spread the risk, especially when it's your first purchase, if you're feeling a little bit nervous about that. But obviously, it comes with complications of its own. And from your background, I know you have a ton of experience with fundraising now, with raising capital. So, can you give us an overview of some of the deals you've been a part of and how you've seen them structured?
Yes, and this is kind of a new concept for me. So like Katie said, I started raising capital this year for other people who are building short-term rentals. And there's two ways that I do it. We'll either do like a fix and flip where it's just more of like a private money deal, or we'll do an actual partnership where it's partners going in. And for the partners, it's positioned as passive income. So typically, the way we do it is we'll split equity 50-50. So the operator pool will have 50% of equity they're splitting, and then the investors that bring the capital will have 50% of equity they're splitting. So our role as operators is to try and make this as passive for the investors as possible. They get a percent of profit share, they get a percent of equity, and they are partners. It might be helpful to define like what we mean by partners is that when we do a partnership, we form an LLC together. It'll be the operators plus the partners that come in. We'll form an LLC together, and then the LLC is what purchases the property and owns the property. So that way it's technically not like a first position lien, but they are part owners. So they are protected if like we ever default or anything like that. They are part owners on the property. Whereas with private money lending, if we're doing just like a flip and we pay you back a 12% return, they don't get any ownership in that. They're just getting their return. They don't get any of the profit share. So that's kind of a high level overview of like the two ways that we pretty much raise capital for deals. But I love this like idea of applying this approach to your second home or your vacation home. Actually, I my background before I did capital raising was co-hosting. I know we talked about that when I was on Sweet Success. My background's in co-hosting, and a lot of the clients that I co-host for, I co-host in a vacation rental market all in Big Bear, California. A lot of my co-hosting clients, there are 2 couples that own the properties together. So they basically were like, "Hey, we're 2 family friends that end up vacationing a lot, so we just decided to go 50-50 on this property, and neither of us wanna manage it, it's not our expertise, we'll hire you to co-host." So I've seen this a lot. I personally don't have, like, 50-50 partnerships like this, but I think this is, like, a fun way to, like, approach this. Like, you don't have to be I think people think of, like, capital raising as like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that, like, investors aren't gonna trust me." But if you're trying to get into your second home first, find that buddy, that couple that you would be vacationing with anyway. Like, if you've got young kids or you're a young family, find that family that you would be going with. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law, and maybe you guys aren't even vacationing together, but you know you're not gonna use the place more than 5 weekends a year. They're not gonna use the place more than 5 weekends a year. Why don't you guys go in on it 50-50 and then split all the expenses and split the profits? Like, this is totally, like, a great way I could see getting into a second home.
Yeah, for everyone listening, watching, we are going to do an episode with Natalie about co hosting. And that, as she said, if you don't want to actually be the one running the rentals part of it, you don't want to be communicating with guests, etc., co hosts are going to be a great option for that. But I want to go back to those two deal structures that you talked about because I think there's a lot of relevance for what you're saying in terms of if you want to buy it with a friend or two couples wanting to buy together, for example. So when you talked about fix and flip, so you're essentially talking about buying a house that's in disrepair, you're renovating it to then sell it and make a profit off of it, correct?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. And you talked about something called private money. So essentially, you're going to someone who is not a bank. They are setting a higher interest rate. And the reason the interest rate is higher than what the bank is going to give you is because this is seen as potentially a more risky investment, I'd imagine, because you don't have all the checks and balances of the bank. It's something that's typically done for a shorter amount of time, depending on how long that renovation period is. And then they're going to be paid back in full once you sell the property. Is that correct what you mean by that?
Yes, that is correct, but I will correct one misconception there. A lot of times, our standard is basically to offer our, private money lenders 12%, and that is an annualized return. Anytime you're talking percentages, it's spread out over 12 months. So if you ever hear people say like, "Oh, the stock market averages 8%," that means over the course of a year. If you're getting quoted 7.5% on a mortgage, that's over the course of a year. So we're always talking in annualized terms. So an easy way to think about this is with 12%, basically our private money lenders are compounding 1% per month. So if they invest 100,000 with us, then if we are able to flip the property and return all the money to them within 6 months, they'll get paid back 106,000. So 1% per month is an easy way to think about it. But I'll just correct one thing. A lot of times banks are quoting higher for fix and flips.
Wow.
And a lot of that can be it might maybe the percentages and the rates are about the same, but banks will take longer. They wanna do so much more due diligence, especially if you're new to flipping and you don't have a big portfolio to show them. They might require more, like, legal documents or, like, attorney fees that you have to pay for. So, a lot of times it actually ends up being cheaper working with the private money lender, and we like it because it's actually, like, supporting, like, a regular Joe, who just wants to see their money somewhere more consistently than supporting a bank. So, it's always worth inquiring with a bank, but don't let that, like, get in the way because very often we see that it's cheaper to go with a private money lender.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. You've finally bought your dream vacation home. Now what? Your goal is for it to pay for itself, but between managing bookings, guest messages, and cleaners, it can feel like a full time job. That's where Logify comes in. Logify is a comprehensive vacation rental platform that makes it easy to manage and market your second home, even if you're just getting started. From syncing your calendar across Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com to automating payments and guest communication, Logify simplifies it all. It's built for beginners and comes with free one on one onboarding to help you get up and running fast. From now until April 30th, Logify is offering Second Home First listeners 60% off their yearly and bi yearly plans using code SHF60. That's S as in second, H as in home, F as in first, 60. Click the link in the show notes to get started. Finding the right cleaning team has been absolutely crucial to the success of my second homes. They're my eyes and ears on the property when I'm not there, spotting issues early, keeping standards high, and helping me wow guests time and again. But finding someone local you actually trust? That wasn't always easy until I found Turno. Turno connects you with vetted cleaners who understand the demands of short term rentals in your specific market. Their app makes everything simple, from auto scheduling your cleans to photo and video checklists that ensure your property looks exactly the way you want, and even automatic payments after each clean is completed. Click the link in the show notes to check out Turno and get $25 off your first cleaning. And now back to the show. Yeah, and I think this is a strategy that people could apply too. So if you have a parent or a relative or a friend or something who has the cash that you need, you could say to them, "Can I essentially borrow this cash at this set interest rate that we determine together?" And then they are not getting equity in the deal, which is what we're going to talk about next, meaning they're not actually going to own the home. So essentially, they are your bank, if you will. You use that money at first, you pay them back over time over a set way. So I think that is an interesting way for people to get the capital, because this is what we're hearing time and time again is like, I love this strategy, I love this idea. How do I get the money to actually make it happen? So that is one really interesting idea. And then let's talk about partnerships, which you talked about. You had operators and investors. So, investors, I assume you mean the people who are coming with the capital, with the money to the table. Operators being the people who are actually going to operate it as a short term rental. Or in this conversation, it could be the person who's like spearheading the purchase, even though you might hire a management company or a co host.
Yes, that's correct. It could totally be the person who just finds the deal, underwrites it, brings it to the table, comes up with a design strategy. Like that is also counts as the operator too.
Right, right. And this, you were saying part of it is equity. So let's go back to the examples of the couples that you co hosted for. There's two couples together, they're buying a property together. So in that case, I'd imagine they split the down payment, they split the monthly mortgage payments until the property starts to make money itself. And they, like you said, they form an LLC. They purchase the property that way. So let's start with that. How do you form an LLC?
Okay, wait, I'm not an LLC lawyer. Like, literally, this is you guys, if I can make an LLC, any of you can, but, like, literally go to, like, LegalZoom and just set this up.
There you go.
So that's, like, an easy way to do it. You might want to if my recommendation would be in something like this, especially if the partners you're finding are friends, and we just wanna make sure that sometimes it's tricky mixing business with friendship. I would also go through the step of having a contract lawyer or a real estate attorney like put together an operating agreement for you guys. Have ChatGPT take a swing at the first thing, like type in some things that come up to you that you're like, okay, if there's a dispute, how are we tie breaking? If one couple thinks, hey, we should invest in a hot tub and another doesn't, how are you guys tie breaking that? Is there a like discretionary spend where if one couple is up there and they notice that the garbage disposal's broken and they just want to replace it, can they just go do it or do they have to call the other couple and get approval? Like I would put in something so just think through some like common scenarios that you guys may run into about like just discretionary spending. Are you guys going to open a new bank account and have a credit card together on this? Type that into ChatGPT just to give you like a basic, but I would have an attorney review this and just really form like an operating agreement that, all four members or both couples or however you want to do it, sign that. So typically with us, we as operators, we have that already formed and we just present it to an investor that we bring on. Maybe they'll have a couple red lines or something that they want to change, but for the most part, they just sign and return to us and we kind of set those standards. But if this would be your first time going into something like this, I would recommend you sit down with like the couple or partner you're doing and like hash out how you want some of this to be. You could even define how many weekends each you guys get to use it. You could say holidays are off limits if you want to be booked on 4th of July and New Year's Eve and you don't want those taken. So all those things I would define.
That is so helpful. I was going to ask you, like, what are those key things that you've seen in deals people need to align on before they go into a partnership together? I think you touched on a bunch of great ones there. Is there anything else that immediately pops to mind that you're like, oh, I've seen problems arise over this?
The other one I can think of would maybe be with staffing, like, if I'm just trying to think of, like, the things that give STR owners the most grief, like, maybe cleaning teams. So, at what point, who makes the call on who to hire? I think one of the best ways to do this, if you guys plan to self-manage, like, you and another couple go in on it, would be to define roles, like, maybe one person or one couple is the one who found the deal and brought it and has a vision to design it and list it and market it, and then maybe somebody else is really good at the bookkeeping and tracking expenses, and that person is gonna be the one who forms the LLC and takes care of, like, the legal nitty-gritty. Like, I think if you guys can define each of your realms, it'll be easier to not, like, step on each other's toes, but with something like this, it's just gonna depend on, like, your dynamic. I think with the way we do it, we have our operator team, and we've decided internally, like, who makes which decision, and then the passive investors, they just get the payouts. There are cases where they have voting rights and stuff. If we have to, like, raise additional capital or something, like, they'd be brought in, but it's a little bit easier to define those than if you have 2 couples that are, like, planning to use the property together and both try to self-manage.
Yeah, of course. What are some common ways that you've maybe seen equity divvied up or expenses, repairs, profits, or even like you were talking about, like how many weekends we could use it? Are there any best practices you can share to help guide people to have those conversations?
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry it'll be like it'll sound vague, but I really think for something like this, it just will depend on your dynamic with the other person. Like, I could see a scenario where you and your spouse wanna invest in a second home, and maybe your in-laws have always said they wanted to invest in real estate, but they're older and they're not gonna travel there and spend time at the property, but they just wanna invest or they wanna gift a contribution to you to support you guys doing it, that's gonna be a very different, like, conversation on, like, who's using the property and when, than, if it's, like, 2 families that both want to be there during summer and yeah, again, I hate to, like, be so vague, but I think it would just, like, really depend on your dynamics. I have a feeling that as people listen to this, there's gonna be people that pop in their head that they're like, "You know what? We'd love to own a second home with them," and there's gonna be people that are like, "No, they're not a good fit." Like, I think on an intuitive level, you probably are already, like, thinking to yourself the dynamics of people you know, who you wanna work.
And maybe the suggestion is take a vacation with them first
That's
and
actually
see,
a great idea. Like, write it
see how
off
they
as
are.
your first business expense of you guys going together, and it's just a trip to see how you 2, like, dwell in a space together and see if you really can handle going in and owning a property together.
But actually what you're saying is not vague at all because what you're suggesting people do is really identify what the goals are for them and their specific situation. I'll link in the show notes if you haven't taken yet the vacation home owner archetype quiz. That's a great place to start, really just identifying your goals and doing that with the people that you want to invest with, seeing are you on the same page? What's your ideal situation? And I think Natalie like you said, some people want to be in the day to day, managing the guests, designing the home, and others just want to say, I want that 12% annualized return. So,
Yeah, and you could do both, like, maybe there's I'm just thinking, like, me and my husband, if we wanted to buy a second home, I already know the couple that we would do it with, like, there's a couple that we travel well with them and vacation well with them. They're about to have a kid, like, our kids would get along great, so I already have someone in mind, and I know I would end up being the one managing, like, they both have full-time jobs, they're not gonna touch it, they'll use the property, but they're not gonna touch it. My approach with them would be come to the table that we each put in 50%, but I would propose something where I get like, my husband and I, we get 60% of the earnings, and you guys get 40. I'm more materially involved, like,
yep,
I'm gonna be the one that's there managing everything, I'll
you'd
be
be
handling
paying at least that to
maintenance.
a management company anyway.
Yes, yes, maybe I'll pass it off, but, like, I would argue that, like, even though we both put in 50%, like, clearly my role is gonna be more involved here. So that's just, like, an immediate thing I can think of that would make sense for me, and I think for them, like, they wouldn't mind. They'd be like, "Great, we get a vacation home that we can use. We get to split the costs of getting into one, which we otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, and we'll get returns and a place to use that we don't have to manage. Win-win." So,
Exactly.
yeah, there may just be different dynamics like that that work for you. Katie, I know that you guys the one of your second homes is one that you guys plan to move to in a few years. If you're gonna buy something like that where you see it as, like, your retirement home one day, maybe you wanna write something where it says, "Hey, we both get to use it as a vacation home now, but in 10 years, we're buying you out or we're refinancing you." Like, you could totally define that right up front and just say, "For the next 10 years, you guys get a vacation home to split with us, and this is what we intend with this property."
I love that. It really shows that this could be completely personalized. There is no one way, no template to do it. But I think you're giving people a lot of interesting ideas on how to structure the deal. Have you seen situations where some partners come to the table with no money? They're the ones who come to the table with, I'm going to design it, I'm going to furnish it, I'm going to handle the guests, I'm going to do all of that. But I'm going to have a finance partner who's the one funding it, and they're going to have no work to do. They're just going to get the passive income.
Yeah, that's what our typical deal structure is. The properties that I'm raising capital for, our operating team brings in 0 of the money, but we bring in all of the work. We're underwriting the deal. I raised money for Maddie and Skylar with For the Love of Upstate, and, Maddie's a licensed realtor in upstate New York or in the state of New York, and so she does everything for the properties. Skylar property manages launching the property. I'm doing investor relationships. We have a COO that once it's launched, she's the one doing all of the operations. So we don't bring a penny to close. It's all funded by our investors, but we split equity 50-50. So there's a lot of value in just running the whole show, like especially high W-2 earners and stuff and people with full-time jobs that don't have time, but they want to get into real estate. Don't undervalue the role that you bring to the table by just getting the deal done and making it profitable.
So essentially, you, Maddie, Skylar, and the other operating partner, 4 of you, split 50% of that equity.
Yes, yes, and we it's not split 4 ways evenly, like, that they've like, everyone on the team has, like, a different role and, like, who gets more based on where they're bringing more work, and then on the capital investor side, they split their 50% based on percentage invested. So, like, easy numbers, if we were raising 500,000, 5 people each put in 100K. They would technically each have 20% equity, but we split it 50-50, so they'd each get 10% equity in the deal.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. When I was finally ready to rent out my vacation home, I had no idea what to charge guests. Thankfully, that's when I found Price Labs, a dynamic pricing tool that helps me automate pricing like a pro. It's simple. Price Labs uses real time data to automatically adjust my rates based on local demand, nearby events, and booking trends. It's easy to use, lets me set my own minimum and maximum prices, and keeps my pricing smart and competitive without any manual work. If you want your vacation home to pay for itself or even turn a profit, you need Price Labs to help you get the most from every booking. Visit the link in the show notes and enter code Second Home First, all one word, for a 30-day free trial plus $10 off your first invoice. Interior design is one of my favorite parts of buying a second home. I love creating a beautiful space. But let's be honest, staying on budget, managing orders, tracking deliveries, and juggling countless retailers can get overwhelming fast, which is why so many hosts turn to Minoan. With Minoan, you can shop more than 180 brands you love all in one place. That's brands like Crate and Barrel, Samsung, Anthropologie, Article, Casper, and so many more. They give you access to better than trade pricing, something typically reserved for professional designers, allowing you to save on every purchase. They keep every order, delivery, and receipt organized in one clean dashboard. And the best part, there's no membership fee, no subscription, no catch, just a streamlined approach with big savings. Once your second home is set up, Minoan can even make it shoppable. Your place basically becomes a four-walled influencer. So after guests spend a weekend obsessing over your couch or those sheets or that coffee maker, they can scan your QR code and order the exact same item for their own home. You earn a commission, no extra work required. To furnish smarter, visit minoan.com/second home to sign up and receive a free $25 in credit. If you're listening to the show, I know making memories with family and friends is super important to you. And that's why I'm excited to introduce you to Flightographer. Flightographer connects travelers with local photographers in more than 350 destinations around the world. But it's more than just a photo shoot. It's a way to capture meaningful memories and experience a place through a local's lens. When I look back on past Flightographer photo shoots I've done, I don't just see pictures, but special moments preserved. I remember the feeling of that day and the story behind every shot. Whether you're celebrating a milestone birthday, a family vacation, or a special getaway to your second home, Flightographer is there to capture the moments you never want to forget. To book your own Flightographer shoot, visit the link in the show notes and use code SHF25. That's S as in second, H as in home, F as in first, 25 to get $25 off your first shoot. And now back to the show. Right. Yeah, I think that's huge for people to hear because, again, it goes back to a lot of people say, I want to do this and I don't have the money to do it. So here is a way that you actually could. And I think if people are questioning, well, why would the people with the money want to invest? It's everything that you just said. It could be extremely passive for them. What we're talking about with hands-on management of a short-term rental of a vacation home, it is a lot of work. And that's why you have things like a management company or co-host, but you're going to give some of your earnings to them for the services they're providing. Or if you're the one doing it yourself, you are saving that money and you are the one essentially doing that for them. So there's a huge thing. What you talked about with tax incentives, there's a lot of reasons on your taxes that it can lower your taxable income. Really appealing to people as well.
Yes, and I will say actually the best, investors that we have been people who owned and operated their own STRs before because
Yeah.
they do not question, like, what value we're bringing to the table. They're like, "I've done this, I'm burnt out, and now I'm ready. I've seen profitable STRs, I've gotten money from them. I don't wanna run one again, so please do it." So I wrote those people off for a long time and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if they're the right people to pitch because they could just go launch their own STR." No, like, those are some of the best investors we have because they are like, "Thank you for responding to that guest so we didn't have to."
Yeah, and they're not questioning or nickel and diming anything that you're spending.
Yeah,
They're going, "I know that that's needed for guest experience, so that makes sense."
yes, absolutely.
What are some lessons you've learned along the way, whether it be like that, seeing the types of people who might want to invest or how to structure deals, anything? Like, what are some lessons that you've learned in doing this now?
I think for your audience, what might be the most relevant, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, too, in our co-hosting episode, but since I co-host for clients who own as partnerships, I've had a couple co-host clients who have sold the properties literally because one partner, like, wasn't in it anymore or they didn't care, and that's a bummer to just think like, "Oh, wow, these 2 families owned this property for, like, 20 years, and somewhere along the way, I don't know if there was a big falling out or they just grew apart, but that's been a bummer is I've seen people have to sell real estate, like, reluctantly because one of the couples was out. So, that's one lesson is I would maybe put into your, like, operating agreement or something about if one couple really wants to stay in, can they buy out the other? Do they have to sell? Like, how would the property get evaluated in that case? You don't want one couple setting the price that they want, like, have it appraised by a third party, go through those buyout terms. Maybe you could even put in a clause about like a seller financing option so that one couple doesn't have to suddenly buy out the other for $400,000 or something, but it could be like, "Hey, we will continue paying you like or we'll give you, $50,000 down and then we'll do like a seller finance for your portion until we own it." I could see that being an option too. So that's one lesson that I think you could take away is like I've seen people 20 years into a partnership like this and just like have some, I don't know, a little bit of resentments there. But overall, for capital raising, which is like what I'm doing now, I would say my biggest advice there is always be talking about it. Like, you will be shocked at how many people just in your circle are potential investors and interested, especially, like, something like this, where if you're, like, looking for a partner on a second home and they can use the vacation home as well. I think you'd be shocked at how many people dream of having a vacation home and have just written it off, and if you come to them with, like, "I found the perfect spot, like, we wanna do this, we thought of you guys," and, like, I don't know, just don't, like, write people off. You have no idea how much somebody has saved off, how long they've been dreaming about this. So I would just say, like, keep talking about it and be open to anyone. Don't write people off just because you think, like, to your point, "Oh, they rent their primary. They don't even own their home. They're not gonna wanna invest." Like, absolutely not. I think you'll be shocked at how many people are interested in this and just don't talk about it, but would love someone to just open the door for them.
Exactly, exactly. Natalie, always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for listening to Second Home First. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to sign up for my free weekly newsletter at buyyoursecondhomefirst.com, where I share the simple 4-step strategy to help you do the same. If you have a minute to subscribe, rate, or review the show, or even send a favorite episode to a friend, that would mean the absolute world to me. And if you want to be a guest on the show, have a question you want answered, or a topic you think I should cover, send me a note at hello@buyyoursecondhomefirst.com or on social media at buyyoursecondhomefirst. I personally read and respond to every single message. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Klein, and I can't wait to see you all again next week. The content shared on Second Home First is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment or financial decisions.